Everybody keeps talking about how 4 years ago this week was the last normal week of our lives, and I could not agree more. And I want to talk about where I was back then, where I am now, and the good and the bad that happened in between. Because I think there was a ton of sucky stuff that happened, but there's other stuff that came of it that I could never have anticipated. So first and foremost, 4 years ago this week, I found out I was pregnant with my first biological child. I was a foster mom to two kids who were living with me for about 6 months at that time. I had a full-time job and I was working in the city, and my partner had a full-time job. We owned a house 15 minutes outside of the city and had just a shy of a 5% interest rate. That's where we were, right? And we had reliable daycare that we could afford, and we were figuring out our stuff. We were becoming adults. I had just turned 30 years old. I felt like I was just becoming a true adult. I was hitting my stride in my career and as a parent. Then the world shut down and everything changed. I lost childcare. My job scaled back. I went fully remote. My husband's a first responder, so I became the primary parent. I took on a ton of the mental load of our home. My life so drastically changed, and so did the lives of so many other women. The pandemic pushed more women out of the workforce than men at like 4x the rate. Women's lives were so drastically changed by the pandemic because we took on the brunt oftentimes of the caretaking responsibilities. And when the world shut down, that meant childcare shut down, and childcare has not bounced back. The world is so drastically different. And here we are 4 years later. I now work full-time remotely from my home. I have 4 children now, 2 of whom were born during the pandemic. I have now adopted my oldest 2 children. I've moved 40 minutes away. I now have a house that I was lucky enough to buy in 2020 with a 3% interest rate that I can never leave and will never leave. And this is my life now. And the beauty of the pandemic for me was that I got time with my children that I will never get back. I do not think I would have looked for a remote job. I don't think I would have been able to find a remote job at the time, and or thought that was an option for me before the pandemic. Because of my remote job, I was able to see my kids so much, and I was able to get back so much of my time with them. Also, because of the pandemic, my kids couldn't start daycare till they were almost 2 years old, all of them, which meant they were home. We had childcare for them, but I got to physically see them all day. On my lunch break, when I was grabbing a drink of water, I got to see them constantly, and I would never have had that opportunity otherwise. That was such a blessing. It was the hardest 3 years of my life for sure, but it was such a blessing to get that time with my kids while they were little. And I don't think I would have had that had the world not changed so drastically. Things that didn't go well because of the pandemic and my husband continuing to work outside of the home. I took on so much of the domestic labor and caretaking for our kids that I hit burnout. I hit burnout in 2022, and I seriously almost lost it. I almost left my marriage. I was done. We've come back from that. Things have changed. It's been about a year and a half, almost 2 years now, and we're back. We're back in it. But man, that pandemic sent my world on a tailspin. And I think I still would have had some of these things happen to me, but definitely not in the way that they did. It took everything about parenthood and homeownership and life, and it just amplified it so drastically. And it made us all change so quickly and just evaluate what was important to us. And I'm definitely not going to say I was thankful for it, but I do think there was positive impact from it and a lot of learnings. Yet I would never, ever do it again.